Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes US, UK, Australia set for maritime drone drills in 2024, focus on AI. Philippine troops kill 11 Islamic militants in one of bloodiest anti-insurgency offensives this year. With shuttle diplomacy, step by step, Kissinger chased the possible in the Mideast. Australia to put AI to the test tracking Chinese submarines. US Navy plans to raise jet plane off Hawaii coral reef using inflatable cylinders. US, UK, Australia set for maritime drone drills in 2024, focus on AI. South China Morning Post. Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States have announced plans to conduct joint maritime drone exercises in 2024 and integrate artificial intelligence, AI, into military systems. The exercises will aim to enhance the capability to operate unmanned maritime systems and share and process maritime data among the three countries. The integration of AI will improve the network of buoys in the Indo-Pacific that are used to detect enemy submarines. The announcement follows the second ministerial meeting of the AUKUS Military Alliance, held in California, which aims to counter Chinese maritime expansion. Philippine troops kill 11 Islamic militants in one of bloodiest anti-insurgency offensives this year. Associated Press. Philippine troops have killed 11 suspected Islamic militants in one of the military's bloodiest anti-insurgency offensives this year. The military launched the operation after receiving intelligence about the whereabouts of suspected leaders and armed followers of the Dawla Islamiyah and the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, or the BIF, groups. The BIF consists of militants who defected from the Moro Islamic Liberation Front following peace talks with the government. Some aligned themselves with the Islamic State group. With shuttle diplomacy, step by step, Kissinger chased the possible in the Mideast. Associated Press. Henry Kissinger, the former U.S. Secretary of State, negotiated agreements between Israel, Syria, and Egypt that stabilized borders for nearly half a century after the 1973 Arab-Israeli War. Although he did not resolve the fate of the Palestinians, his work set the U.S. as the chief negotiators in the region and sidelined the Soviet Union. Kissinger, a Jew who fled Nazi Germany, questioned whether Israel could deal with not only threats from states like Iran, but also with the fury of militants. Kissinger approached the aftermath of the 1973 war incrementally, and he likely would have approached the current Israel-Hamas war in the same way, according to his biographer. Israel has launched airstrikes in its hunt for Hamas militants, and Israel's campaign to wipe out Hamas has killed at least 13,000 people in the Gaza Strip and displaced over three-quarters of the enclave's 2.3 million people. Kissinger likely would have looked to Israel's neighboring states to re-establish order. Australia to put AI to the test tracking Chinese submarines. ABC. Australia will join the US and UK in testing artificial intelligence technology to track Chinese submarines. The technology will be deployed by the US Navy's surveillance and attack aircraft during Pacific patrols, using data gathered from sonobuoys. The move comes after Australian naval divers were injured in an incident with a Chinese warship last month. The announcement is part of the AUKUS defense agreement, which also includes a $3 billion military training and equipment package for Australia from the US. The deal will involve training Navy personnel in submarine navigation and ship control. U.S. Navy plans to raise jet plane off Hawaii coral reef using inflatable cylinders. Associated Press. The U.S. Navy is planning to use inflatable cylinders to remove a P-8A jet from a coral reef in Hawaii. It crashed on November 20 after overshooting the runway at Marine Corps Base Hawaii. The plane, which is in good condition, currently rests on parts of crushed coral. Rear ADM Kevin Lennox, commander of the Carrier Strike Group 3, said he is confident the operation can be carried out without further damaging the reef. North Korea says interference in its satellites would be declaration of war. Japan Times. North Korea has warned that any interference with its satellite operations would be considered a declaration of war, and that it would mobilize its war deterrence if any attack against its strategic assets were imminent. The country's defense ministry spokesperson stated that Pyongyang would respond to any U.S. interference in space by eliminating the viability of U.S. spy satellites. How Russia is using Ukraine's cell network against it. Yahoo! Russian forces are reportedly using Ukrainian cell phone networks to control their drones, specifically the Kyivstar network. Kyivstar is the largest cell phone network in Ukraine, serving nearly half of all cell customers there. Russia has targeted the carrier in the past, but Kyivstar managed to restart service soon after Russian forces withdrew. Now, it appears that Russian drone operators are using Kyivstar SIM cards to control their drones. This allows them to exploit the Kyivstar mobile network to track the drone's location and change their flight paths. It is unclear if Kyivstar or Ukraine can take steps to end this practice. Will China's military drills with Southeast Asian nations reduce trust deficit? South China Morning Post. China recently concluded a 10-day military exercise with military personnel from Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. The exercise, known as Peace and Friendship 2023, involved 3,000 sailors and soldiers and focused on improving interoperability between the participating countries. China has been gradually shifting towards multilateral defense cooperation, following the US's example of hosting larger multilateral drills. Peace and Friendship 2023 was the fifth iteration of the drills and marked the first time that naval forces from Vietnam and Malaysia, both claimants in the South China Sea, participated in a China-hosted multilateral exercise. How Democrats are alienating their base by blasting a Gaza war ceasefire. Al Jazeera. Democratic officials in the U.S. are being accused of alienating their own party by refusing to support a ceasefire in the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Most Americans, including an overwhelming majority of Democrats, support a ceasefire, according to a Reuters survey. Activists have protested outside the Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C., calling for a ceasefire, but were labeled pro-terrorist by Democratic Congressman Brad Sherman. Advocates have criticized the comments made by Sherman and other Democrats, arguing that they do not align with the views of the party's base. Democratic policy and public opinion are out of step, resulting in dwindling approval ratings for President Joe Biden among the Arab American population and young voters. Progressive group Justice Democrats accused the Democratic Party of being out of step with its base and voters in general. The conflict, which has been characterized by significant violence in the Gaza Strip, is considered an important issue by many constituents and has been described by UN experts as posing a grave risk of genocide. South Carolina hits 18 three-pointers to beat George Washington 89-67. Associated Press. South Carolina achieved an 89-67 win over George Washington with the help of 18 three-pointers. Michie Johnson scored 24 points, hitting 5 of 7 three-pointers, while B.J. Mack added 20 points with 4 of 8 from deep. The Gamecocks shot 51% from beyond the arc and 50% overall from the field. George Washington shot 42% from the field and made 11 of 22 three-pointers. South Carolina will face Clemson next, while George Washington will play against Navy. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the Six Dimensions. It's time for a quick summary of today's news. First up, the US, UK, and Australia are planning to conduct joint maritime drone exercises in 2024, with a focus on integrating artificial intelligence into military systems. This move is aimed at enhancing the capability to operate unmanned maritime systems and share and process maritime data among the three countries. It's part of the AUKUS military alliance's efforts to counter Chinese maritime expansion. In the Philippines, troops have killed 11 suspected Islamic militants in one of the bloodiest anti-insurgency offensives this year. This operation targeted leaders and armed followers of the Dawla Islamiyah and the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters groups. These groups have ties to the Islamic State and pose a threat to national security. Speaking of national security, Henry Kissinger, the former U.S. Secretary of State, was known for his strategic negotiation skills. He played a key role in stabilizing borders between Israel, Syria, and Egypt after the 1973 Arab-Israeli War. While he didn't resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, his work set the stage for the U.S. to become the chief negotiators in the region. Kissinger's incremental approach to diplomacy could offer insights into the current Israel-Hamas conflict. Moving on to Australia, they're planning to test artificial intelligence technology to track Chinese submarines. This technology will be deployed by the U.S. Navy's surveillance and attack aircraft during Pacific patrols. It's a response to a recent incident where Australian naval divers were injured in an encounter with a Chinese warship. The AUKUS defense agreement is also providing Australia with a $3 billion military training and equipment package from the U.S. In other military news, the U.S. Navy is planning to use inflatable cylinders to remove a crashed jet plane from a coral reef in Hawaii. The Navy is confident that this operation can be carried out without further damaging the reef. Let's hope they can get the job done without any more coral-related mishaps. North Korea has issued a warning, declaring that any interference with its satellite operations would be considered a declaration of war. They also stated that they would respond to U.S. interference in space by eliminating the viability of U.S. spy satellites. It's a reminder of the ongoing tensions in the region and the importance of space-based assets in modern warfare. On the cyber front, Russian forces are reportedly using Ukrainian cell phone networks to control their drones. Specifically, they're exploiting the largest cell phone network in Ukraine to track the drone's location and change their flight paths. It's unclear what steps can be taken to stop this practice, but it highlights the vulnerability of communication networks in modern conflicts. Now, let's talk about China's recent military drills with Southeast Asian nations. The exercise aimed to improve interoperability between the participating countries and marked the first time that naval forces from Vietnam and Malaysia, both claimants in the South China Sea, participated in a China-hosted multilateral exercise. China seems to be following the US's example of hosting larger multilateral drills, but the question remains, will these drills reduce the trust deficit in the region? Shifting gears, the conflict between Israel and Palestine has exposed divisions within the U.S. Democratic Party. Democratic officials have been accused of alienating their own party by refusing to support a ceasefire. This has led to protests and criticism from activists who argue that the party's stance does not align with the views of its base. It's a challenging situation for Democrats as they navigate the complex dynamics of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. On a lighter note, in sports news, South Carolina had a great game against George Washington, shooting 18 three-pointers and securing an 89-67 win. Michie Johnson and B.J. Mack were the stars of the show, helping their team achieve victory. Congratulations to South Carolina on their impressive performance. That's all for today's news. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. What are your ideas on these topics? Let's dive into a lively discussion together. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.